Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to Financial Issues. Great to be back with you here. Hope you had a blessed Labor Day weekend. I know I certainly did, getting to spend some great time with friends, including friends from here at the ministry and family as well. It was really a wonderful time, and hope that you were able to worship the Lord in victory on Sunday. Great to be back, folks. Let's get to it here. Jason MacDowell is going to join me in a little bit. Speaking of Labor Day, actually, he's going to kind of help make sense of the different income classifications that we should have when we consider our financial planning. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Also, the number of Americans dipping into their 401k funds for emergency uses is growing. We'll see why, and I'd love to explore the question as well. Is this a good idea? Chat, if you're listening, you think it's a good idea to dip into your 401k fund for emergency uses? Now, you have to understand the considerations of a hardship specification versus maybe one that doesn't qualify. Consider that. Maybe we'll talk about that later on if we have time. Also, your questions and comments, and a massive amount of money is being set to be deployed in these next couple months, actually. Not for investing, unfortunately, but for that oft mistakenly confused vice that gets compared to investing, which is gambling, as the NFL season is right around the corner, which means sports betting is gearing up. We'll talk about that a little bit.
And Robinhood is determined to make you think they're the same exact things.
See our published works. That's exactly right. So, good stuff. Sam, ready to rock and roll? Got a fun one today.
I'm here.
We're going to have some fun. Yep. Hey, a couple necessary items to start the show here. First of all, folks, today is Darlene's birthday. So happy birthday to Darlene. If you want to send Darlene a birthday message of encouragement, put that in the chat right there. Wherever you're watching, you can do that for us. You can also, if you want to send me an email, Seth@financialissues.org, I'll be sure to pass that along to Darlene. Speaking of which as well, partners, please check your emails this morning or the partner alerts page if you didn't get the email for a very important announcement that we'll be discussing later on this week. Again, if you didn't get that alert in your email, you check your spam folder. You can also check the partner alerts page. That'd be the place to find it. Good to be here with you all this morning. Let's get to it here. So the markets on Friday, they were digesting kind of a rather uninspiring PCE report. And as such, sentiments fell from the highs that we were seeing earlier in the week. By midday, the tech-heavy NASDAQ was down over a full percent, while the other two were bleeding with much less intensity. That's where the NASDAQ finished right around the percentage mark. The S&P 500 finished down about 2/3%, and the Dow Jones was down about 1/5% to close the bell on Friday. Now, despite the down day, it was a good month for the month of August. The major indices all firmly positive. The Dow Jones was up 3% for August. S&P was up 2%. The NASDAQ was up right around 1%. The markets obviously had a day off yesterday. Pre-markets this morning are down. There's a bit of uncertainty going on here, folks. I'd say the big thing that's happening this morning with that is the news that came out this weekend following court decisions to halt a good portion of Trump's tariff efforts. Now, Sam, when I heard this right off the bat, I thought to myself, oh boy, here we go again. These rogue courts are messing up everything that the Trump administration is trying to do. So we'll just have to see what happens here.
At least it's a federal court this time.
Yeah.
It's an appeals court.
Well,
it's not
true.
just some random one-off court. But
Exactly.
yeah, I think in the end, this is going to have to go to the Supreme
I think
Court.
so.
What is the president's power when it comes to tariffs?
Yeah,
and this has been the worst thing about the whole tariff regime. Regardless of what it does for the economy, in the market's eyes, it's this on-again, off-again thing. They just want to be able to have some stability to factor in what the heck is going on.
That's exactly right. Boy, Sam, we were talking just before the show. The Supreme Court is going to be very busy this session because they've now probably will have this to deal with. And they've also got that question of Lisa Cook. Can she be fired? That's right. Sweet Lisa. Not as good as our Lisa in the chat. We love our Lisa quite a bit more than Lisa Cook. So we'll have to see how all that goes. But
speaking of the Fed, Seth, I'm seeing that the markets are digesting pretty well the whole idea that an interest rate is coming, an interest rate cut, despite that PCE data. About a 90% chance as of this morning.
So up from the numbers late last week. So, every so often the markets will show some resilience, and perhaps maybe we're seeing that there. So we'll have to see how that goes. The Treasury yields, folks, obviously, they're really popping this morning. They were up pretty heavily. Right now, the 10-year Treasury is up almost at 4.3%. The 30 yield was up almost at 5% as of this morning. I don't have those numbers right in front of me right now, but that's where it was at earlier this morning as we saw that news come out. So that's what we're looking like for this week, folks. Not much when it comes to economic numbers today. Tomorrow we get ISM manufacturing. This is really jobs week here. So Wednesday we get the JOLTS job openings. We also get non-farm payrolls, the unemployment rate on Friday. Thursday we get ISM services. We also get the Fed's beige book on Wednesday. So a little bit of dipping into the Federal Reserve there. But otherwise, that's kind of what we're looking like. Earnings season for quarter two pretty much in the rearview mirror now, as we'll be coming to the end of quarter three at the end of this month. So that's what we're looking like there, folks. All right, Sam, let's get to, before we get Jason on here, let's get a comment from Friday's show. Rich in Columbus, Ohio, making a good comment here.
Well, speaking of the Federal Reserve and Ms. Lisa Cook, Rich wants to know, was Ms. Cook a DEI hire? And if so, would this be a cause for Trump to fire her?
You know, that's a good question, Rich, and I appreciate you asking that. I'll say this. Was she a DEI hire? Probably. I'd say probably absolutely she was a DEI hire. Unfortunately, though, it's probably not enough to fit the realm of having cause to fire her, because it's not a crime to hire someone based on DEI standards. Here's my thought, and Sam, you can chime in on this as well. I think the best chance that Trump has with this is if this clerical discrepancy that we looked at a little bit last week, if that has some traction and gets some legs under it. Because regardless of what Lisa Cook claims, there was a mistake on her, I think it was a mortgage application or something like that for one of her properties.
And Trump's claim is it doesn't matter if it was on purpose or not. What matters is that you really messed up on really important documentation. So what does it matter? You shouldn't be allowed to sit on the Fed for that reason.
Exactly. And you know what? He's got a really good point, because if you're on the Fed, you have to be able to catch that stuff. And so the fact
I believe it was Bill Ackman, the billionaire, saying that people have retired from the Fed for much less than that.
Right. That's exactly.
Just for the dignity of the institution.
Yep. Absolutely. So the fact that she's not, it's interesting there for sure. Once again, this is probably going to go to the Supreme Court. With this court, Sam, you know, it's a conservative majority, but you just never know. There's a couple interesting characters on there. I think we were saying our prediction on Friday is there's 3 people who you're pretty confident they'll vote one way. 3 will vote the other way. One of those groupings of 3 is the 3 liberal justices. The other one is the hardline conservatives. And then there's 3 who are kind of the wild card.
Yeah,
so we'll kind of have to see how that goes. Yep. So interesting.
We're in uncharted territory here, though. So who really knows?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
But just because you're conservative doesn't mean that you always think Donald Trump is right.
For sure. For sure. So, Rich, it's a good question. I don't think it's cause, but I do think that it was a DEI hire for sure. And I think, Rich, you're bringing up a good point. That's the sad reality of the DEI nonsense, folks. You know, all of a sudden, common sense people like us are now being forced to notice and take skin color into consideration when we see someone hired for a job. We put the puzzle pieces in place. Now you have to wonder, was she hired for some reason other than her credentials? I mean, let's face it, she was brought on by Joe Biden in 2022, and she holds the title of the first ever African-American woman to serve on the Fed's Board of Governors. The clues are all there for this being a DEI hire. Absolutely. And now you realize that there's something that's being brought up that maybe makes you question, okay, maybe she wasn't actually fit for the job in the first place. Unfortunately, the DEI stuff has now made race an issue when it never should have been. Never should be an issue. I should never think, okay, this person, she's a black woman, she's on the Fed Board of Governors, she should be qualified for the job she has. But in this post-DEI world that we live in, all of a sudden, now that's a question we're all asking. Was she just hired because of her skin color, because of her gender? Maybe.
Has the opposite effect, right? The whole point of DEI in theory is to make people less racist, I guess, but in the end, it makes everyone so skeptical. It's really unfair to minority people because it adds that question mark over their careers that they just don't deserve most of the time. That's
right. It is a slight to minorities as well, and the left refuses to admit this, of course, but it really is in many different ways, actually. It forces people to think more about race than they probably should, and then it also, I think it's kind of like your skin color, your gender requires you to need a little more help. So we'll go ahead and get you this job because of those things instead of your credentials, which is what it should be. So listen, folks, I think the Trump administration is asking the same question. If this woman is incapable of properly filling out a mortgage application, how can she be capable of serving in the Central Bank of the United States? It's a good question. It has nothing to do with race or gender at all. It has everything to do with hiring qualified people for the job. And I think that's really important to see, especially as we consider folks in our investing, certainly looking for companies that avoid those DEI practices. Absolutely. Obviously, the DEI question is not equivalent to a question of biblically responsible investing, but it has a lot to do with it. And where there's smoke, there's fire there. You can see that for sure. A couple quick hits that we'll get to here before we get Jason on. The Trump administration is now canceling almost $700 million for offshore wind projects. Also, mortgage rates have now been falling to a 10-month low. And Dell is lifting the annual forecasts on AI server sales boom there. So a lot of different things that we have talking about here, folks. Once again, just want to remind you, wish Darlene a happy birthday today and make sure that you check your email for that alert that we sent out this morning. You can also find it on the alerts page. This is for partners only. You can find it on the alerts page of the partner website, financialissues.org. Jason MacDowell joins me next. We'll be back for more financial issues after this.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life, and some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay, or to go, to remain the same, or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Have you ever wanted to manage your own investments but lack the time to research stocks that are both profitable and biblically responsible? That's where Financial Issues comes in. We're a nonprofit ministry that equips Christians to manage their own portfolios without compromising their values. We handle the details so you can focus on what you do best. This is biblically responsible investing, made simple. To start managing your money with confidence and conviction, go to financialissues.org.
Hi, this is Sheena Bird, the host of Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shanna are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Great to be here today with you folks on Financial Issues. I got a very special guest joining me as usual, my friend Jason MacDowell, one of our dear friends and Financial Issues contributors. Jason, welcome back, brother. Hope you had a good Labor Day.
I did. It was great. How was yours, Seth?
Yeah, it was very nice, brother. I got to rest from my labor, which is ironic that we celebrate Labor Day by not working. Pretty fun.
Yeah.
So, Jason, actually, that was kind of the direction I wanted to go with our conversation here. Coming off the heels of Labor Day, probably be as good a time as any to discuss the income, earned income, how to think about these things a little bit differently, not just when you're talking about your salary that you make, but also your investment income. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about this. And, it brought to mind, Jason, our founder, Dan Celia, always used to say your greatest asset is the ability to earn an income. So if we can all do that well, I think we'll find ourselves in a really good spot. Jason, let's just get it started here, brother. What do we need to know about earned income? Maybe we would start with Labor Day, the holiday in itself. Some pretty interesting facts there. What do you have for us?
Yeah, returning from Labor Day this year, it's like you said, Dan said, it's one of our greatest assets. And, we plan for that when we can't do that anymore. So that's the whole purpose of the long-term plan. So Labor Day, there's some fun facts with Labor Day. It serves as a dual purpose of just recognizing, celebrating social and economic achievements of American workers. So marking the unofficial end of summer also for many people. So recognizing those two parts are very important. The first U.S. Labor Day was actually celebrated on Tuesday, September 5th of 1882 in New York City. Oddly enough, this was actually the first Waffle House opening day as well, which is, a very staple of our society.
I got to tell you, Jason, I don't think I've ever been inside of a Waffle House before. I do think that they won they kind of won the day with the whole Cracker Barrel rebrand debacle because Waffle House didn't change their boring rebrand. They just stayed as the normal Waffle House. So I guess you could say they won that one. But that's crazy. They've been around for over 140 years. Nuts.
Did they really win those?
Yeah,
Seth?
right?
Because in the end, they're still Waffle House.
Yes, they are still Waffle House. That's exactly right. Anyway, sorry, Jason. Go ahead.
Yep. And so on June 28th of 1894, Congress passed an act making it the first Monday in each September for each year as a legal holiday from the District of Columbia and the other territories. So with paid labor, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about earned income. Nice. So with earned income, the definition is any compensation received for services performed, including wages, salaries, tips, and net earnings from self-employment. This is distinct from unearned or passive income, which is generated from sources that do not require active work, such as investments, interests, or rental properties. The IRS says employee pay is earned income only if it's taxable, and the non-taxable employee pay, such as certain dependent care benefits and adoption benefits, is not earned income. So there are some definitions there. So there's two earned incomes, those that work for employers, and then there's also the self-employment. You are the employer. So from the employer, wages, salaries, and tips, as mentioned before, is all taxable employee pay, including overtime and bonuses. And then what I thought was interesting was union strike benefits. That's another definition. Payments received from a union during a strike are considered earned income. So I always thought that was funny. Yeah. It's like unions going on strike was like, hey, well, we can't go on strike because we're still getting paid. So that is earned income.
Boy, what a wonderful luxury there, Jason.
So disability benefits, of course, is under this. Payments from an employer's disability retirement plan are earned income until you reach the minimum retirement age. So that's for employer. Now let's cover the self-employment side as well. Self-employment, there's net earnings, the profit from a business or farm you own after subtracting business expenses. There's freelance gig work as well, income from jobs where employer doesn't withhold taxes, such as driving for a rideshare, Uber, Lyft company, or selling goods online. Think of tax statements in the 1099. Of course, we're not going to, not a tax professional. These are in the tax realms, but there's also ministerial duties, which I thought was interesting. Gross income received as a minister or member of a religious order can be considered self-employment income as well. Of course, that's all dependent on the tax classification structure of a church or faith-based company. So we'll take a look shortly at how it's taxed. Income tax, everyone knows the federal government uses a tiered system of tax brackets where higher tax rates apply to higher levels. And then state income tax may also affect that as well. And then, of course, the wonderful FICA taxes. These are considered payroll taxes from earned income. These are taxes on Social Security, your favorite subject, Seth, and Medicare.
Folks, I will not say a word. I'm just listening to Jason. Not going to say anything.
So for employees, and I want to remind you about this, Seth, your employer, although they're withholding a portion of your wages, they actually pay for the other half of contributing to these social programs. So at least you can look on the bright side. For those of us that are working, hey, part of that's being covered by an employer. So a partial part of that, even though once we get to retirement, hopefully whatever that's going to look like, part of that was supplemented by your employer. Whereas self-employment individuals, much that work like in our industry as licensed advisors, are considered self-employed. So we do have to take the brunt of that tax. And every year on my birthday in September, I pay quarterly taxes for my birthday to our government. Wonderful.
What a wonderful birthday present that is. Jason,
what a wonderful birthday.
Can I actually jump in there with a quick question for you? Because I think this is important for folks who, I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs in our audience. How much stock should they put into, or how much thought should they give to the different tax structures if they're going to have some kind of self-employment versus if they're just going to be a normal employee? Because I know for a lot of people, the idea of owning a business or even having, like you said, like a side gig or something like that, it's a pretty attractive idea. But when you start throwing taxes into there, it could get pretty tricky. What would you say to that?
I love professionals in our industry, and I'm talking tax professionals, and in some cases for certain industries, a tax attorney as well. So CPAs, tax attorneys, getting consulting from wise counsel is very important. And then, of course, a lot of that could be a business structure where you could talk to a corporate attorney that helps with designing legal entities. Setting that up is a great conversation to have. And most self-employed people actually do take that route. So anytime we do talk with clients that are like that, they have that conversation or have had that conversation. But I'm very pro even just getting that consultation with them just to figure out the best tax structure. Some do it while actually actively in the business and they're making enough income. And sometimes it's good to wait. And that comes from either a CPA or, their attorney say, hey, we're going to, wait until your business has grown big enough. I still think it's wonderful to have that conversation before and getting that information like, hey, we're not going to charge you to do this either legal entity structure or do this tax structure until it's big enough. So still, I believe that's wise counsel and you can learn from that. And I think it's a great object. So I think, of course, involving those two, always definitely into that as well. So,
and then Jason, one more quick question for you. Thank you. This is before we get to the investment portion. And you know what? Even as I'm asking it, the question just slipped my mind. So I will have to come back to that. If I can get the question back. Actually, you know what? I do remember what it is. It just came back to me. People have asked in the chat before, any insight on finding a good, trusted, even Christian tax professional? Do you have any insights on that? Or is it just simple as, hey, do a Google search, do some research, look for Christian tax preparers in your, in your area? What would you say?
Yeah, I think the last time you asked me that, I failed to just mention the easiest thing. Start with your friends and family for referral.
Yep.
So if they have one, they can talk to it. Obviously, you'll find out for yourself the implementation. Someone might be a Christian, but they, through their practice, do they effectively understand kingdom giving? Like with an attorney, they may be a Christian, but if they do the estate plan, are they used to in their practice understanding that kingdom giving can easily be done as a beneficiary on your qualified account, like an IRA, or do they want to add it into your legal document? So that's another thing where you can kind of flesh that out and talk with them. But really, it's just easy. Just start with your own friends and family and figure out, just start meeting through the referral process that way for either CPA or tax professional or, your attorney as well. Attorney has to be in your state, of course, too. So that's the one thing you have to be with the attorney side. So,
yeah, great. Thanks, Jason.
All right, so let's go into what's the whole point of talking about earned income? Well, it was really my conversation to get to the Roth IRA. The Roth IRA characteristics, they do require earned income for contributions only. So that's just for contributions with Roth conversions. You don't necessarily need that. So this would include even a part-time job for those that are in retirement. That is earned income there. So you would be allowed to do contributions to the Roth that way if you had earned income. So it has to classify as earned income. So that's really the underline and bold print of it. So Roth conversions are a little bit different classification. They can be done without that earned income, where you just basically take money from an IRA and you convert it to a Roth IRA. It's a classification of money movement, but you do pay the tax. It's taxed as income. So talk with your tax professional about that. That is always something you can do later on in the stages of life when you're maybe not working and have earned income. So you're in a lower tax bracket. So that's always important there. So with contributions specifically, if you have earned income, you cannot exceed the earned income if it's below a tax filing year's contribution limit. So that example is if you worked a part-time job in 2025 and as a retiree and you have your income there and you made about $5,000, gross as a part-time job, then those contributions are going to be limited to that amount in that tax filing year. So for 2025, contribution limits are $7,000 for those under 50 and $8,000 for those over 50 as an individual. So it would be kind of constrained from there. So where this Roth really applies to both retirees and non-retirees, until Congress comes up with a better type of account, it's that tax-free growth, tax-free withdrawal, as long as you have the qualifying distributions from there. But that earned income is really the underlying point, is that's what you need for contributions only there. So.
Jason, I appreciate that so much, brother. Hopefully that can be helpful for folks who are listening, if you've got that Roth IRA there. Jason, thank you so much, man. I know this is stuff that, folks like me who are just doing average regular investing, and perhaps not as much as folks like you who are in the industry daily, we don't often think about the tax implications of this stuff. But I think that's so important, especially like you mentioned, when you're trying to find someone who has their pulse on, wanting to do kingdom giving, wanting to make the most of your money. I think that's so important. As we, consider, all those things. Jason, thanks so much, brother. It's always a pleasure having you on.
Always.
It's great stuff. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks, Jason. All right, folks, we're coming to the end of this segment here. And of course, we have to leave us. We hope you have a great rest of the day. We do have more financial issues coming right around the corner here. So hope you'll stick with us here, folks. Hope you'll join us on our live chat as well. Or you can say hello on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, and make sure that you do that today. More financial issues coming up right after this. Stick with us.
Where's Mima? We found out Shepard's diagnosis when I was about 17 weeks pregnant. We learned that he was going to need a series of surgeries after he was born in order to give him what they considered a normal life. And we weren't sure how this worked.
Yeah, very emotional, very, very broken. And as my wife just said, not sure how this worked. And called Samaritan, and they said, you just go have that baby. You leave the rest to us.
And just to hear the confidence on the other end of the phone of, this is not something that you need to be concerned about at all. You focus on the health of your family, the health of your baby, and we will walk with you every step of the way.
Most people have no idea what their money is funding. In many cases, they are unknowingly supporting companies that contradict their values. That's why it's so important to know who you're investing in and what they stand for. At Financial Issues, we help Christians invest with biblical values. Our daily live broadcast is completely free and covers the economy, markets, and even politics through a financial lens grounded in a biblical worldview. But we don't stop at just commentary. We equip believers to manage their own portfolios, offering research-backed asset allocation models, biblically responsible stock recommendations, and practical guidance. You manage your money. We do the research. And for what works out to be only $11 a month, you get access to everything you need to invest with conviction. If you're ready to align your faith with your finances, go to financialissues.org. That's financialissues.org.
One of the emphases of preborn has been ultrasound in two ways. An ultrasound machine if a pregnancy clinic doesn't have one, and then an ultrasound session, which we underwrite hundreds of thousands of those. We've seen over and over again the dramatic results that when a woman encounters her baby for the first time and hears that heartbeat, she realizes the magnitude of what's happening here, that there is somebody else, that's her baby. So this is why preborn pushes out ultrasound as much as we possibly can. Preborn has seen over 200,000 babies saved, over 59,000 people come to Christ, populating earth and eternity, life for this life and life forever. Save the baby's life, but save the mother's life so that she can lead that baby to Christ. If we're bringing people into this world and the mother doesn't receive Christ and the child is born and the child lives its life and doesn't receive Christ, this is not a good end. And so we have to have the gospel as part and parcel and really the heartbeat of what preborn is.
folks. Great to be here with you this morning. It's been a good show. The chat has been lively, of course. Thank you all for those wonderful birthday wishes for Darlene. It is so nice to get to feel the love of the FISM family. It's not my birthday, but I get to even kind of be like well, what's the word I'm looking for, Sam?
Like you're mooching off of it.
The chosen instrument to pass these messages along to Darlene. Yeah, it's kind of like a mooch. Yeah. So awesome stuff there. Appreciate you all so much.
I see Rich in the chat is making fun of me because I used the phrase dignity of the institution in reference to the Fed.
Ironic, isn't it?
All I can say, you got me, Rich.
Yeah,
I don't know
absolutely.
what I was thinking. It was
tough.
a long weekend, so who knows?
It is tough to say that the Fed is rather dignified when fundamentally there's not much dignity there. But no, I get it, man. Markets, folks, take a quick look here and we'll see what's going on. They've now opened and pretty down to start the month of September. All three indices well below 1%. The Dow's down 1 1/4, S&P 1 1/3, and the Nasdaq about 1 2/3 down this morning. So tariff worries. The month of September has historically not been a great month for the markets as it is. I wonder how much of that is in play with investors' minds this morning. So once again, folks, we see that, man. We're long term. We're sticking through it, sticking it out, and it's good to be reminded of that. Speaking of this idea of long term investing, and when you come across difficulties and emergencies and things like that. Sam, interesting headline we saw that more and more Americans are now withdrawing from their 401k funds whenever an emergency comes up. What can you tell us about this?
Yep, that's according to Vanguard. They say 4.8% of their plan participants took hardship withdrawals from their 401ks last year. That's up from 3.6% in 2023. Now, the IRS defines a hardship withdrawal as one made due to a, quote, immediate and heavy financial need. These withdrawals are penalty-free, though they're still subject to some taxes and must be limited to only the amount necessary to satisfy the financial need itself. Some of those needs include medical expenses, funeral costs, and also funds needed to perhaps prevent eviction or even home foreclosure, as an example.
Yeah, so it makes sense there, Sam. A true emergency, a true emergency, funeral costs, medical expenses, exactly right. Folks, listen, there's much to speak to with this trend. And I think first and foremost, I think it's safe for us to say we would not encourage to do this if you can help it. Now, I have that caveat there, if you can help it, because
I was going to say that's why it's an emergency.
That's exactly right. Things happen. And if it's a serious emergency, yeah, that money's there. Absolutely. I think it is worth saying, though, the wise investor understands there are different buckets of money at his disposal. And in an ideal situation, not even in a perfect world, Sam, because when an emergency comes up, there's nothing perfect about it.
You're certainly not living in the ideal world.
It's a reminder
less than ideal, we could say.
This world is sinful. Exactly right. But in an ideal world, if you've done well, if you've prepared for this, then you're not drawing from your 401k or your 403b or your IRA for something like this. You have a savings account that can be used for something like this. So I do think that's important for us to understand. Now, that being said, life does happen. Sometimes things happen that are outside of our control. And so I also think we can't be afraid to understand, hey, you know what? I put this money aside for investing. I've grown it really well. And something happened that was outside of my control. And maybe we start to realize that's God's hand of grace on us in preparing for something that we didn't even realize we needed at the time. But God did. God is sovereign. He knows all things. So I think that's really important for us to be able to have the grace for that as well, to say if you're in a situation where you need to withdraw from your retirement for something like this. And it's really good, Sam. I'm glad you mentioned that, a lot of these withdrawals, if it qualifies, they're penalty free. They still have to pay the taxes on them, but they're penalty free. That's good. That's really good to not have to pay that penalty there. So the question I asked for the chat earlier, I'd like to pose this to all of you now. In a non-qualifying hardship situation, where you're still faced with the choice of going into debt to settle the payment because the payment's too big for your emergency savings, something like that, you didn't have an emergency savings, or cutting part of the legs out of your retirement plan and withdrawing your investments, knowing you have to not only pay the taxes, but also the early withdrawal penalty if you're before that age. What do you do? It's an interesting question. What do you do? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I think it's not, there's not an easy answer to this, folks. There's not if this is it, do this. If this is it, do this. I think you have to consider some things with this. That's really the answer, is there are things to think about. The thing to consider is whether this non-qualifying hardship is still one that is an emergency level for your life. I think that's really important. So maybe it's not someone died. Maybe it's not a medical expense, but maybe it's a question of a car, for example. You have to commute to work. You don't have a car now. You're not in a place where you can take public transportation. Maybe you live out in the country, something like that. Basically, you need a car. Do you withdraw your 401k to buy the car? Do you go into debt for the car? Maybe I would think the best option is maybe consider, am I looking for a car that is too expensive? And maybe I can lower my price for the car and then I can afford one from my savings. That would be my suggestion. These are just things to think about, folks. And I think lastly, another thing to think about with something like this is possible alternative options. So this article, actually, it's interesting. It speaks about borrowing against your 401k, borrowing against the value of your home. I personally am a little leery of both of those things, truthfully. I think a better solution, and truthfully, folks, this may be the first tree to bark up against, would be the following. I think there's two options here for you. Number one is the local church. And I say that not saying, please don't hear me saying this, folks, that the local church is a crutch or something to be abused. Certainly don't think that we should do that. But I know many churches, mine included.
Well, if you have a broken leg, even a financial broken leg, you do need a crutch. So I don't even think that's a bad thing. You're
exactly right, Sam. That's a really good point. When you have an injury, now you need something to lean on, and the church can be that. And again, I want to be careful saying this because many have heard instances of this where congregants would abuse this, but a lot of churches, mine included, have some kind of emergency fund. So it's maybe a goodwill fund, a mercy ministry fund, something like that, where usually it's an option for congregants to tithe to, where they tithe to this fund and it's set aside. It's not used for ministry expenses. It's not used to pay the pastor's salary. It's not used to keep the lights on. It's sitting there so that members can present a situation to the elder board. They say, hey, listen, I'm in this situation. I don't have the money to pay for it. Can you help me out? I think that would be a great option to consider, folks. It might not work out, but it's something to consider because the church is to be a second family for its members. It really is. Actually, in some ways, it's the first family. It's our family. It's the family of God. And then our families of birth in some ways actually are our second family. But you get what I'm saying there. This is one of the benefits of being part of a local church.
Yeah, that's right? Important, right, Seth, Sam? Because especially we have a conservative audience. So a lot of them are thinking, I can do it on my own, have that independent spirit, which is good to have. Yeah. But that is what the church is there for. Right? I was talking to some of my elders about this and they said, it's actually sometimes difficult to get people to take the money when they need it because they don't want to be a burden.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think especially for us as guys, we have a really hard time. I'm thinking if I was in that situation, I would have a hard time even going to my pastors. But that's what the church is for, folks. Absolutely. And that's such a benefit of being part of a local church where you share that covenant love with one another, that one anothering relationship. So I'd say before you consider going into debt, and even before maybe you consider making the early withdrawal in the 401k or 403b, talk to your pastor. See if he can help. And then secondly, I think another thing to consider is the family. It is the family. Now, we got to be very careful with this. Families and finances can be very dangerous, and you got to make sure you have a good family relationship first. And I would caution anyone against entering into any kind of financial contract with a family member that you don't have a good relationship with or good trust with. But if you have a family you love, family you trust, I think this could be a good place to go to as well. I'll share with you really quickly, folks, when Eloise was born 5 years ago, this was before we were at the ministry, so we didn't have Samaritan Ministries, we had a family member help us pay our hospital bills. And it was a wonderful thing. I have to share more with about how that went on the other side of this break. But family could be a huge part of that for you to be able to help you with that if you're in a situation like that. Interesting stuff there, folks. I'll be curious to read your chat comments to see what you have to say there. Got the Ag Report coming up here, and then more financial issues right after this.
This is Craig Howgard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. For higher on Friday, with the buying seeming to be a result of techno trading and not a change in the fundamentals of the market. It was the last trading day prior to a 3-day weekend, also the last trading day of both the month and the quarter. As a result, we saw aggressive profit taking by the funds as they bought 30,000 contracts during the session. As a result, December corn finished 10 1/4 cents higher at $4.20 1/4. The soybean complex was mixed, with soybean oil weaker on continued concerns on the SRE reallocation to larger refiners, while the majority of the soybean meal contracts contracts were higher. They tugged beans along with them as November beans were 6.5 cents stronger at 10.54.5. Wheat was pulled higher by the rally in corn. We saw some feed wheat trading in Texas last week, and we may see a bit more if the price spread between corn and wheat stays in the current range. Friday's close had Minneapolis December wheat 2 3/4 cents higher at $5.80 per bushel. Kansas City rose by 4 cents to close at $5.19 3/4. We had Chicago 5 1/4 cents higher at $5.34 1/4. Cotton futures moved lower as the USDA reported that the accumulated cotton export sales commitments are currently down 23% from last year. December futures ended the session 76 points lower, settling at 66.54. Livestock futures were all strong as we headed into the holiday weekend. We had October live cattle $2.72.5 higher at $239.65 per hundredweight. September feeder cattle rose by $2.97.5 as they ended the session at $364.77.5 per hundred. And our October lean hog at $95.02.5 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures ended the week with its third straight lower close. At the closing bell, we had September futures down 4 points as we settled out the week at 18.11. This has been Craig Haugard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
I'd like to just say thanks. You guys helped to take the pressure off. There's no pressure as far as making, a bad decision or anything like that. The pressure is all on you guys. That takes the pressure off of me. I don't feel any stress being a member and, your advice.
We really appreciate that. We're grateful for your partnership.
Go to financialissues.org to get started today.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
And we're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Hey folks, thanks for sharing your comments there to that question that I posed in there. I agree with much of what is being said for sure. George, a good comment. There's just a lot of variables. It's tough to answer that question effectively of do you make the choice to make the withdrawal on the retirement plan, or do you figure something else? Do you go into debt for it? I do think that, and Sam and I were just talking about this, folks, once again, don't be afraid or averse to ask for help. I really want to kind of drill that into us. And I'm speaking to myself here as someone who takes great pride in being able to provide for a family. It's hard to ask for help. Really, it really is. But most churches, if they're good, faithful, gospel preaching churches, have a good system in place where they have money set aside, where they certainly have the safeguards for it not to be abused, but it's ready to be deployed to help their congregants. So I think it's a really good thing for you to consider. I was going to share the story So Megan's grandmother, who's a dear, wonderful, wonderful, sweet lady. We love her so much. She's a believer. She'll actually come to the Bible study sometimes. She'll listen on the Friday Bible study. She helped us out with Eloise's hospital bill. This was before we had Samaritan Ministries, so we were on the normal, big government health care. And of course, there were some bills that were too much for us to pay. We were not receiving the blessings of Samaritan Ministries yet, but she was able to come alongside us and help us out there. And it was a gift. It was not a loan. It was just, this is a gift for you guys. I'm giving it to you. We have the relationship with her. It was such a blessing. So consider that. Consider the family. Consider the church family. That might be the best option to start. Let's see here. We got George from North Carolina also saying, Lisa Cook, a DEI hire. Wow. Makes me wonder about Ketanji Brown Jackson. What in the world is this coming to? Right.
Well, we know she is because Biden said so. He said, I'm going to put the first black woman on the Supreme Court. If that's not DEI, I don't know what is.
And I couldn't help but remember, I think some on the left had claimed that she was the first black person on the Supreme Court, which is just
or first woman. I can't remember which one, but you're right. They confused the two.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Nelson, a hilarious comment here from Louisiana saying, stop picking on Waffle House. Nelson, listen, I trust you with that one, man. I've never been inside a Waffle House before, and I don't really plan on it.
Count yourself blessed.
I'm sure it's good, but So anyway, that's fun stuff there for sure. All right, Sam, let's do this here. So the NFL season is about to kick off this week, and NFL betting in particular, is expected to set some.
You mean investing?
Records. Yeah, investing. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
As our friends at Robinhood would like to believe. What can you tell us about this, Sam? And Sam, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm not hearing you.
Oh, sorry. Yep. I probably need to unmute myself.
There you go.
That would probably work, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sam's still here, folks.
I'm still here. I promise. That's right. Yeah. So the NFL betting is underway, and it's set to set new records this year. $30 billion on this year's NFL season. That's according to the American Gaming Association, an increase of, get this, 8.5% from last year. So working on 10% gains compared to last year. And this is just estimates. It could be much higher. A 2024 study, by the way, found that legalized sports betting is having all kinds of problems as it's becoming more and more prevalent, leading to higher credit card balances, reduced access to credit overall, and also a decline in long-term investments. So no, it's not an investment. It's actually adverse to investments. By the way, another shocking study found that states that have legalized sports betting actually saw bankruptcies in those states increase by 28%.
Boy, there's a lot we could say about this, folks, but I'm going to take it from maybe an angle we haven't talked about before. Let me say right off the bat, one of the things I love about our strategy is that we screen out against companies that are involved in gambling. We believe gambling is harmful and destructive. We don't want any part in it. And especially, unfortunately, the fact that so many do conflate investing with gambling, folks, they're not the same thing. They're not the same thing. The only similarity is that you have money and there's some level of risk being put to it, and the end goal is to make more of it. That's all it is. That's the only similarity. After that, the similarities end.
And unfortunately, plenty of investors are encouraging you to invest in these companies. I'm looking at Motley Fool right now. They say 6 best sports betting stocks for 2025. U.S. News Money, 7 best sports gambling stocks for March Madness. So it's really a problem.
It is a problem, Sam. And the problem is structural. It's the problem with the mindset of so many investors that they're treating it like a casino. It's not what it is, folks. It's not hey, I'm getting in, I'm trying to make a quick buck, get out. You're in this, the investments that I'm in, I was talking to family members about it yesterday, Sam. I'm planning to be in these for 40 years or longer. Depending on, obviously, if the Lord returns, if he takes me, if we hit a hardship and I need it, something like that. But otherwise, I'm planning to be in this. And I know you all are as well. But let me talk about it from this perspective for just a second, because sports betting is related to a lot of illicit activities and habits caused by the American sports industry in general. And let me say this as a disclaimer. I love sports. Okay, I've been an avid sports fan my whole life, especially of my Philadelphia sports teams in particular. I root for them. I cheer for them. I do it with my family. It's a fun thing to do. I especially love the activity of playing sports. I played all my life. I was a catcher in high school for baseball. I was a not very good point guard in basketball in high school, but I had to play point guard because we were such a tiny Christian school, and so they needed me to play point guard. I love sports, though. I plan to teach my sons how to play sports because of the good things that it brings: camaraderie, physical fitness, helping them to learn valuable lessons of teamwork, determination, of course, bringing glory to God and everything. So it's a good thing. What I'm about to say is not a warning against sports in general, or playing sports for sure, or even, frankly, enjoying a football game on TV on Sunday afternoon. This warning is in the danger of making sports an idol. And we see that so many people have made it an idol when it comes to their sports betting. They focus their money on it, their attention. Let me tell you something, folks, a little history lesson. During the Roman Empire, the Romans had a key weapon at their disposal to make sure that they kept down rebellions from the people that they conquered. And the weapon is not what you might think it is. It was not the sword. It was entertainment. It was entertainment. It was gladiator games. It was dramatic plays. It was Olympic competitions. These things were not in and of themselves necessarily bad, with the exception of the gladiator games.
Killing each gladiator
other.
Games.
Those were pretty bad. But the other stuff, the Olympic games, like, okay, whatever, it's sports. They became vices when free-thinking people spent all their emotional energy and a lot of money, by the way, on feeding the desire to be entertained. We want to just be entertained. The Romans knew it. You keep the people entertained, and they will be very easy to rule.
Bread and circuses.
Bread and circuses, Sam. That's exactly right. It was Juvenal, the Roman poet, around the turn of the first century AD. Give them bread and circuses, they will never revolt. It's so true. So fast forward to the 21st century. During this coming fall, every Lord's Day during this fall, in our region here, roughly about 10 times over these next 4 to 5 months, 70,000 people will make a pilgrimage to a modern-day Coliseum in South Philadelphia to cheer themselves hoarse for their favorite football team. Millions more will gather around little boxes in their living rooms and basements and will spend 3 to 4 hours watching these football teams, this one another's, play on TV. They'll arrive at the stadium. I've seen some 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning on Sunday mornings for a nighttime game, for a primetime game, and they're there 2 or 3 in the morning before most pastors have even woken up to prepare their Sunday morning sermon.
You know what we call that, Seth?
On it.
Dedication.
That's dedication. That's some hardcore dedication there. And then they'll pay hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands of dollars, for tickets, paraphernalia, food and drinks, parking, and sports bets. They'll put a lot of sports bets on. They're going to spend huge amounts of emotional energy. And in some cases, for the guys, they're not spending time with their wives. They're not spending time with their kids. They're not spending time with their church to shout with all their heart and soul for a bunch of dudes they've never met, sweating and playing on a football field in what is really, for many people, has become a form of worship. It's become a form of worship. They will shout hoarse. They will shout out loud 10 times louder than they would ever sing a worship hymn on Sunday morning. And listen, I'm not, please don't hear me say this. It's not a sin to be a football fan. It's not a sin to be a baseball fan. But folks, listen, there are many pagan gods in today's day and age, and one of them in America is sports, particularly football. I have met, and even I felt tempted to do this, folks. I've met people, family members and friends, who by definition, they wouldn't admit this, but definitionally, they worship their favorite sports teams. They spend all of the Lord's Day worrying about their favorite sports team. And if their favorite sports team loses, it ruins their day. It's worship. For many of us, it's worship.
And these are Eagles fans? They must have a lot of bad days.
That's
not
exactly
lately,
right. Not lately, but boy, we've had them. I'll tell you what. And you know what? Not only will so many of us never revolt if revolution were necessary, but so many of us have made this form of entertainment into our God. That's what it is, folks. Here's the truth, okay? Your money, your affections, they reveal to whom your heart belongs. The question is, do you love Jesus Christ the way you love and root for your favorite sports team? Please don't hear me. Listen, I'm talking to myself, folks, all right? I love my sports teams. I really do. But I've been tempted before to make an idol out of them. Can't do that. We cannot do that. What a day it'll be. Just imagine this. You know, we'll pick Philadelphia since this is the region that we broadcast out of, and we have a lot of Philadelphia sports fans here. Imagine Philadelphia ringing out with the shouts of the saints, shouting and screaming for the Lord of glory instead of their favorite sports team. Not saying that they shout and scream for their favorite sports team is sinful. It's not necessarily sinful, but it can be when it becomes worship. We have got to get this right, folks. We've got to worship the Lord and worship him only in spirit and in truth. And so I apologize. That rant came about because of sports betting, but I think sports where we see a clue of where someone's heart belongs. If they spend so much money on this particular sports team or this particular game, you have to start to wonder, okay, are they worshiping the Lord of glory, or are they just worshiping the team or the money? Folks, our worship has to be of God and God alone. Hope that made sense for you, folks. I appreciate you all so much. Again, just a reminder, wish Darlene a happy birthday today, and make sure, again, that you check out that partner alert that we sent out earlier this morning. We'll talk more about that partner alert later on this week. You can check it in your email spam folder or on the partner alert page. God bless you all. It was great to be with you today, and Lord willing, we'll do it again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Seth Udinsky. See you next time for more Financial Issues. Have a great day.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.